Hey everybody, welcome to the Leadership Syllabus. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. The Leadership Syllabus Podcast provides insights from leaders on the main leadership lesson they've learned from their work, life, and experiences, and who they are as a person. Each 30-minute mod will capture a bit about who the guest is, their work, and the one lesson they would contribute to the Leadership Syllabus. This collection of mods will offer you a one-series stop of real-world and life lessons to enhance your own understanding and awareness and effectiveness in life and leadership. And today's mod is on self-assessment, and my guest today is Eric Lucrezia. And Eric is an MBA Admissions Consultant, 5-time author, podcast host, and keynote speaker based in Paris, France. Originally from New York, he's always loved working in education, leadership development, and anything with an international flavor. In his spare time, you can find him at the gym, painting watercolors or playing the sax with his band, which I just found out about. And Eric was my fraternity brother at Hofstra University, and he was also on episode 13 of the Book Leads podcast with me, where he covered Obvious Adams, the story of a successful businessman. And it's incredible to believe that that was in November of 2021. My, how time flies. Eric, thank you for being here, brother.
Time flies indeed. Good to see you again, John. How are you?
It's wild times, but aside from that, great to have you back. It's incredible how time flies. It's incredible to see how somebody changes in that time, everything you've shared, the new books that have come out since the first time we spoke. But getting to this series, I want you, Eric, to answer, how would you describe yourself? Who are you as a person?
Yeah, that question got me thinking. I was like, all right, how would I explain what makes me me? And I think it's in 3 words. If I were to sum it up, I would say I'm definitely an explorer. I've lived in 4 countries. I have this personal life mission to visit at least 100 before I die. Maybe you don't have to get to every country, but 100's a nice number. So I'm in the 60s now.
Amazing.
So an explorer and just curious in general, Number 2, I would say a connector. I think that, I'm not a religious person, but if I would have to say there's a meaning in life, that would be about connection between people, right? Finding connection, making connection, preserving connection. And third of all, I would consider myself a creative, and not just in painting watercolors or the saxophone, but I think that's one of my, let's say, superpowers in the office. I definitely bring creativity to the team, and as a maybe divergent kind of thinker, that's something that I bring to the table.
So for you, I've always seen this in action. I met you,
97?
97, 98. So we're talking 27 years. I've always seen that. I've always seen that energy, that connection. You'll talk to anybody. You'll make anybody feel comfortable. So where does that, before we jump into the other questions, I've never asked you that. I've never asked you this. Where does that come from for you? Where did you see that? Did you model that after something you saw in your family? Is it just innate to you? Where do you think that comes from?
It's a very good question. I don't know. My family is very gregarious, very, very outgoing, very always joking around, playing music, that kind of stuff. But outside of my family, I was very shy as a kid. When I was growing up, I was very timid. I didn't know who I was, and I wasn't very confident. And at some point that changed as you grow up, right? You hit puberty and you go off to college and you just discover a new self. And I just the pendulum swung far the other way. And I realized, I am who I am. I have nothing to be afraid of, and just go for it. I think that's what makes life interesting, right?
Yeah.
Talking to people.
Every time I talk to you, I get that. I get that from you. I take it away from you. I learn from you. It's a great reminder talking to you, because you just jump into everything. You are that explorer that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And I was going to say, this is something that it's been coming up in conversations with other friends of mine who, either they're speakers, they work in education, they're leaders in some way. And some theme that keeps coming up is advice to the younger generations is talk to strangers.
Yeah.
We all have our phones in our pocket, and the easiest reflex when you're waiting online at the bank or the supermarket, or you're on the subway or whatever, we just go right to our phones. It's such a comfortable crutch of a reflex. And so therefore we're missing out on unlimited interactions that we have. And so you never know who the person sitting next to you could be, that person that offers you an opportunity. And so I just want to pass on that wisdom. I have some other friends and wiser, older leaders that I know.
Yeah. No, I believe in that too. I do it myself. You're not talking about strangers that are walking past you on your street, But if you're waiting in line at the grocery store, at the DMV, wherever it may be, you're in a situation with somebody, so you have something in common. And every
Totally.
time I've started a conversation or just made a joke or whatever, just connecting the group or talking in that manner, speaking in that manner, reaching out, it's incredible how open people are. We don't have the time to fill each other in and on all the details of life, but I love that idea of speaking to a stranger, talking to somebody, even if there's just that small commonality you may have in the moment.
It's also practice for when you end up in a conversation that's actually important.
Yeah.
Being able to engage. And this is something that, people, whether it's like people, influencers or professional like sociologists and so forth, anthropologists who talk about we've forgotten how to engage, or young people, particularly those who, were coming of age during the COVID years and they were forcibly locked up like everyone has been. But so dependent on online exchanges and texting and so forth that the in-person interactions, they don't have the training, that life skill from young. And now they're in high school or they're getting their first job after college, and there's a disconnect there.
Yeah. No, that's one of the major lessons I want to teach my kids. Eric, what do you want to share about your work? Here's where you can share what your work is, what the services are that you offer. What can you break down for us?
Yeah. So as you know, I work as an MBA admissions consultant. I work with people from all over the world that are trying to get into the world's best MBA programs. My clients are going to, Columbia, Stanford, INSEAD, that's here in France, these top schools. And it's incredibly competitive. And so the reason they come to people like me is to help them, first of all, find the schools that are truly the best fit for them. And second of all, to help them have the best application possible to help them to shine. And one thing that I stumble across very frequently is when I have a new client, the thing I like to do in the very beginning is what I call a storytelling interview. And it's the same set of 30-something questions I ask everyone to get to know them, right? But also to uncover some of those hidden gems, these stories about their life or aspects of their personality, family history, trips they've been on, things that I think most people tend to undervalue. And actually, often those are some of the things that make you stand out and make you the most interesting candidate in the room. And so in doing this, one of the questions I ask everyone is, what's your leadership style? And almost everyone, and I'm talking people who are in their 20s and 30s are the people who are my clients, right? Typically between like 24, 25 up to like young 30s, right? And often they've had experience managing people already. And when I ask them this question, what's your leadership style? 9 times out of 10, it's like, I don't know. They just haven't really thought about it. It's like, and I made this comparison before, like those of us who are native English speakers, we just know how to speak English, but we never really thought about how to conjugate verbs or whatever. So very often it's just a lack of having taken stock, what I call self-assessment, or even like learning about leadership theory that would give them the tools and the vocabulary to talk about it in a more sophisticated way.
What about, can you share some information about your books? Because I think when we spoke for the first conversation on the book leads, we didn't cover your book, but I think at that time you had one out, the second was coming out. But can you explain for the audience the books that you do have out, what you've published?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my previous life, I was the director of recruitment for the MBA program at a business school here in France called ESSEC. It's one of the top business schools here in France. And I left. It happened to coincide with COVID. It was not planned, but so I was just in the process of starting my business, my admissions consulting company. It's called Candidate Coach. And suddenly the world's on lockdown and it wasn't really the right moment. But I had all this information in my head about how to go through the process after working with so many applicants that I had been recruiting from all over the world, and seeing the things, the gaps in their knowledge, the things they struggled with, the advice that I would give to them on the recruitment side, working for the school, so they would be good applicants. And I just wanted to put all that information into a book. But when I thought through, I wanted to go beyond like, okay, research and all the different steps, resume, the GMAT test, interviewing, essays, all that stuff. I wanted to get into more practical stuff like, okay, what about visas and loans and scholarships and like how to move over to this new country? And I was like, you know what? It's got to be country specific, these books. So I made it a series, right? So as you said, I had one book out last time we did one of these on the Book Leads podcast, and that was called Getting into an MBA in France. And then I think the UK one came out right after that last time we met. And then I've since done Getting into MBA in the USA, Canada, and Spain's the 5th one in the series so far.
Amazing. Eric, what has your work taught you aside from the mod title, aside from leadership? What have you learned the most out of the work that you've done?
Well, first of all, the reason I do this job is because I really love people and I love learning, right? This goes into the explorer side of me, the curiosity side of me. And with every person I meet, I'm either learning something about their culture, the country they come from, or their industry. I don't necessarily know about, what it's like to manage a team working on an oil rig off of Angola kind of thing. And like, you learn about that. You learn about the luxury watch industry in Switzerland and so forth. So that's fascinating. And just that, I think the main takeaway in that, besides appeasing my own curiosity for people, is that the takeaway is every person has something to offer. Every person has something to teach you. And that goes back to what we were saying before about talking to strangers. Again, not every single stranger you pass by on the street, but engaging with people, you're going to learn something. And I think that's beautiful.
So then now when it comes to the mod title of self-assessment, you spoke a little bit about it when you spoke about your work and as a consultant. Can you speak to that? What else have you seen in terms of self-assessment, its importance? Because I know after we graduated college, I think you were at Long Island University. So you've worked with undergraduates, you've worked with graduates, you've worked with professionals. Can you speak a little more about self-assessment and how that applies to leadership, just based on the spectrum of people that you've worked with?
Yeah. And so, I'm 48 now. As you said, time has flown, and I've gotten to work with people with all different leadership styles, whether they were my direct manager or they were somebody, much higher up, or they were managing a different department. And also, I'd like to add that leadership isn't necessarily managing people. Taking the lead could be managing a project, managing budgets, all different things. So you start to see when you observe other people. And here's the thing, it's always easier to observe other people than yourself, but you can observe other people and get a sense of what their leadership style is. But I think to understand it, to be able to classify, categorize, understand, evaluate what you're observing, it's very handy to have these kind of tools of, like I said, leadership theory and the vocabulary that comes with that. And so what I do as part of the storytelling interview with my clients, I send them this article that kind of gives a very quick summary. It takes you like 5-10 minutes to read this bit, but about leadership theory, and it breaks down about a dozen different leadership styles. And I asked them to go through this article and identify which ones resonate the most with you today, which ones are the styles that you would like to embody or have in the future, if there's a difference. And then I asked them to write about it, essentially journaling, and it's just like an exercise in reflection and taking stock of, okay, what am I like? Who's the leader? What is the leader I want to be? What does that look like in the future by, in this case, doing an MBA off?
Yeah. So you've been using that same article this whole time, or you've stuck to
Totally.
that?
I mean, it's just a simple article. It gets to the point.
Yeah.
It's got a good, like I said, 10 or 12 leadership styles. And there's many, many more things out there. There's loads of good books out there. People ask me, what about mine? And I tend to land on somewhere between democratic leadership style, coach, and transformational. There's not you don't have to fall into one box,
Yeah. I like you pointing that out, because I think a lot of people think that leadership is, before they really start thinking about it, before they start thinking about how leadership applies to them, I think they may view it as cookie cutter. I have to fall in this kind of style, that kind of style. But then they realize you can fall across those different styles wherever you are, depending on who you're talking to, the organization you're in, the team that you're in. You can address people in different ways just based on your strength in that situation, and not know that you're seamlessly moving across those different styles, that there is that flexibility that exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You probably know Myers-Briggs, right? This thing that's been around so it was a mother-daughter team that came up with it decades ago, and it's still kind of like one of the main go-tos. And it has its faults, but it's pretty good at helping you assess your personality. So it's like extrovert, introvert, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You've seen these. And then there's other versions that are more leadership oriented. There's one that I've done here in France. So it was in French, right? So they call it arc-en-ciel, which translates to rainbow, right? Because at the end of the day, you have 4 main categories, and where you fit in the range in each of those categories. Again, it talks about extroversion versus introversion. Are you more task oriented or more in the relationship of your team kind of thing?
Yeah.
And so they speak about where after you take the test, and it's I don't know, probably couple hundred questions to really get to who you are without trying to influence your own results, right? And so it gives you a score or a result which is considered your natural leadership style, and then your adapted leadership style. So as you were saying, depending on the situation when you're in, like if you're at, like, let's say, a high level position, managing a small team, a big team, what kind of industry we're talking about, what kind of situation, you may adjust your leadership style accordingly. And so I think that's interesting too, our capacity to become a different kind of leader as the situation calls for it.
When you go back to those students, the ones that you gave the article to, they went off, they kind of looked at the different styles, assessed themselves, and they came back to you. Can you speak a little bit about that? I mean, does the light bulb go off? Like, what kind of conversations have you had with them after the fact when they've, they go in cold. You're like, what's your leadership style? How do you lead? They don't know. They read the article. They come back. What does that look like when they come back? What kind of, maybe some examples of how they've undertaken that style or how they've evolved in your relationship as you proceed with them as a client? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, I asked them to assess themselves based on the different styles that are listed, and then to write, like I said, a couple paragraphs to reflect upon the kind of leader they are and the kind of leader they want to be.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong answer. These are all different, like, I want to say options, but in a way, you don't choose it so much. It's just like your natural style is who you are, right?
Yeah.
So there's just different possibilities. So there's no right or wrong answer. But I think what becomes interesting is when they talk about the style they want to have in the future. And so when they're writing their essays for their MBA applications or masters or whatever, but in any case, that they're able to speak intelligently about themselves in a way that's like concrete, that's a bit more pedagogic, because you are going back to school. So having an academic approach to this thing would be useful to be able to assess. And it's also about goal setting, benchmarking, to be able to assess if the school you're applying to is the right school for you in the first place. Does this school embody the same values that you share, that has the tools, skills, resources, etc., that you hope to leverage to get to your destination? Because every school offers something different. I mean, there's loads of fantastic schools out there, and that's about finding the right one. That's a big part of what we do, is the school selection process.
So the audience call to action at this point, what are specific action steps that people can take when it comes to self-assessment, your mod title, as it's added to the leadership syllabus? What would you tell them to do? I mean, you've spoken to your clients, students going back to school, but what can apply to a broad audience of every kind, of every background, of every kind of identity? What kind of steps can they take to put into action that self-assessment and self-understanding? What would you suggest?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, learn about leadership, right? There's a lot of ways you can go about that. Read, and some of the things I'm going to say are maybe a bit controversial in the age of AI when everything is like ChatGPT, etc. But reading and writing, I feel like writing, it improves how we think.
Yeah.
And to write better, you kind of have to read. And if reading is challenging, or if time is a situation, whatever, for people who are like ADHD or whatever, there are also audiobooks. There are a lot of solutions that help you with reading. Like my friend actually has a company called Mindflow, which is like a speed reading course that is really effective for people who struggle with focus in reading. It's a challenge for me as well. And it has lots of tools that you can use to make that easier for you. But yeah, like I said, reading about leadership, writing about it, and journaling. Also listen to podcasts like the book leads, like this one, anything you can do to expand your vocabulary, get you thinking, and then take stock. Like, okay, which of these things resonate with me? Which of these things describe me? And what direction do I want to take things? And then making goals, like, planning and goal setting, I think is super important. And so I guess my last takeaway, I would say, if I can squeeze this in.
Absolutely. You got time.
Yeah. Okay. No, would be, what I've done is block an hour every week for learning, right? And for me, it's Fridays around like 4 or 5 p.m., right? And I protect that time, because like we all talk about things that we want to do. Oh yeah, I got to do that. I want to read that book. I want to go on that trip. I want to become this. I want to find a new job, whatever it may be. But it always will remain in the future if you don't take steps to do that, right? And so, I think many of us are accustomed to like blocking a moment during the week, which is for like planning and scheduling or goal setting. That's fairly common for people. Maybe that's like 1 hour a week that you do that, for the week ahead, right? Another thing that I really like for blocking out is like your golden hour, which is meant to be like, all of us have that time of the day when our brains tend to function the best. Like some people are morning people, other people it's like lunchtime, other people it's like late afternoon.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing. So I block that golden hour and I protect it fiercely because I know this is when I'm going to be the most focused and effective at doing my work. So I won't take meetings from people. I won't look at email then. It's for doing work, that golden hour. And the third one is learning. And I think so it's important to give yourself that gift. It's like, you need to, how else are you going to grow if you're always working on other people's stuff, right? If you work at a company, you're working on other people's stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So for you to grow and progress in this life, I think you have to preserve that time for yourself.
What's been your journey with journaling? Can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, I like writing in general. I mean, obviously I have 5 books, but these are more guides. But I'm actually also working on a science fiction story. I'm really happy that I've picked that up again because it's been like shelved for a while, that project. Anyway, journaling in general, I think is also useful when you're dealing with stuff. Like we all go through difficult moments in our life to help you process your emotions and understand what you're thinking. So at least for me, it's incredibly helpful for understanding, I guess. When you write, I think you also gain a deeper understanding of something. Like you could read about something, you could hear about something, but by writing, it's like you've put it into your own words. It sounds like something you'd hear from your elementary school teacher or whatever, but in your own words, right?
Yeah, we used to hear that all the time, but I mean, now we have a deeper appreciation for it, especially when you're somebody that wants to learn and you put down your thoughts, you put it to paper, you can see it in front of you, you can strategize based on what you're reading, what you're sensing in your words. It is incredible. I haven't done it for long, but it is incredible how just putting it to paper, instead of trying to balance everything in your head and overthinking and whatnot, seeing it visually, seeing a plan, seeing where you can move forward with goals, things you can cut back, things that trigger you, if you will. There's just so many avenues you can take just by seeing it in front of you. It's amazing.
Yeah. And as you said, like sometimes something's like going around in your head. It's going around because you haven't addressed it.
Yeah.
And by taking the time with yourself to like sit with the idea, sit with the problem, whatever. I mean, you might be experiencing anxiety about something, but until you like face it, it's like that's not going to go away. So it's like forcing yourself to face it. I mean, hey, some people, it's about talking to a trusted friend or your wife or whatever. For other people, it's about going to a shrink or a coach. There's many avenues, but the writing thing is very personal. And I don't know, writing is also just a different like approach or a different vein. I don't know. Like another thing people do is walking, actually. Like, and in ancient times they knew this, like Plato, Socrates, right? They like walking while thinking helps you. Something about you're walking through the crevices of your brain or something like that.
Yeah.
Is another strategy.
I just see that all as energy. Every kind of energy that you have to get out of yourself onto the paper, into the walk, whatever it may be. And I love the way you brought up that self-assessment doesn't mean you just sitting there thinking about yourself, or you just sitting there taking an assessment, or you just sitting there journaling. But self-assessment is, okay, what do people around me see that I might not? What kind of perception or lens might they have of the work I'm doing, who I am as a person? So self-assessment can be taking stock of what's around you and kind of looking for the mean and trying to understand what other people may see. And, not everybody's going to have your best interests in mind. So know who you're going to, somebody that can be honest with you. But I like that fact that self-assessment can include other people, because you're kind of doing a survey of what people see in you.
Sure. And that can also be an AI. I mean, this is something, I have my podcast as well, MBA Waves. And yesterday we had a new episode where we had a couple people who work in the MBA space as well. And they were sharing about some intelligent ways to use artificial intelligence, let's say. It's never going to be a copy paste job. I mean, if you say, write me the perfect Harvard MBA essay, it's never going to work out. But if you treat it as like a trusted thought partner, as a friend, you can say, you can kind of like talk to it and have, do some brainstorming, get some ideas out there. And it simulates a person. It can sometimes feel sometimes too much, like a real person.
Yeah, there's got to be good balance with those. It's tricky,
Absolutely.
but it is a good tool. Like if you don't have immediate access to somebody or you have time to yourself. I haven't tried it, but I mean, I can imagine it is good for brainstorming.
Yeah, for sure. Brainstorming, researching, you just got to always, check your sources.
Yeah. Eric, in wrapping up, is there anything else you want to mention or bring up that I might not have? I mean, for this period that we have for this podcast, you just brought up MBA Waves. Do you want to just speak a little bit to that, what the series provides for its listeners and viewers?
Sure. MBA Waves has been around for almost 4 years now as well. 4 years. And, we had been doing live video feed on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook for a bunch of years. And we just kind of reconfigured how we're doing things. So now we're more on podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, was it iHeartRadio, all that stuff. Deezer here in France. So check out MBA Waves on your podcast platform.
Anything else you want?
We talk about all things. I was just going to say, we should say what it is. We talk, about loads of topics, anything related to business and education. We talk into like how to, conceive better essays for your applications, how to approach the exams, how to deal with anxiety that sometimes is associated with taking standardized tests, how to interview better. And then also like careers related stuff. Sometimes we interview alumni from top schools like we've done at Berkeley, at Wharton, INSEAD, HEC. So it's a great way to get other perspectives as part of your research when you're applying to these schools. Yeah. But there's a lot of good lessons there for careers in general, whether it's about, applying for a job or redoing your resume, CV, etc.
Yeah, I think anybody that's in that space ready to go into an MBA program, I think I love the show because it goes beyond the essay. It has all the essay, the CV, all of that, all like the hard stuff that you have to submit. But at the same time, because it is, I think in the beginning it was maybe 2 of you doing the series. Then I think there's 3 of you now, rotate in and out, but you've had different guests on and they talk about all those topics. So I love that it's not just, again, what you're going to submit, but who you are as a person, exercises for anxiety. It's like more holistic approach to MBA achievement, MBA enrollment.
Yeah. I mean, doing an MBA is such a life-changing experience. It is very personal. And let's face it, work takes up a huge percentage of our hours alive or awake. So, things that are life and personal stuff intertwine very much with the work and professional side. And the choice where you go to school is a very personal one in the sense that you want to be in a space, like in other words, a country or a state or a city that you feel good in because you're going to spend a year or 2 there. You want to be at a school whose values and mission statement aligns with your personal values and so forth, and has the expertise that's going to line up with what your goals are. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it is a very, personal experience. And working with my clients as an admissions consultant is interesting. Almost everyone at the end says, I feel like I just went through therapy.
It's a platform to express who you are. I mean, I like the fact that before I really talked to you about all the MBA consulting you do for the enrollment in the schools and whatnot, I did think a bit about the package that you hand in. But now that I'm older, now that I've gone through career, now that I've interviewed people, it is about that self-understanding, that self-assessment, that you really have to know yourself, that it's a lot more than just that packet that you hand in. So I think that what you provide for people is important. It's amazing. And those lessons apply to people in general. So I'm thankful for you sitting down with me for this conversation, bud.
My pleasure. Great to see you. Great to talk to you.
And if there's anything I might have missed, limited on time, especially for this series, let me know and I'll reach out to Eric, see what kind of additional insight, guidance, wisdom, all of it I can get back. In the meantime, thank you for watching, listening, and subscribing. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.